There is no set definition or criteria for a serial killer. Some say it is someone who kills 3 or more people, while others, such as the FBI, say 2 or more killings committed by one person or a group of people. However, there is one constant equation within each of the definitions. That is the cool-off period, which is the time between murders where the killer or killers return to their normal lives. According to the FBI, serial murder is a relatively rare event, estimated to comprise less than 1% of all murders committed in any given year. Many myths have been associated with serial killers. Media stereotypes and hyperboles create myths and great distortions in the public's consciousness regarding the true dynamics and patterns of serial murders in the United States. Some of these myths include loner white males who have a history of mental problems, extreme sexual fetishes, have had abusive childhoods, and they like to travel all over the country. Well, that is just not true. Serial killers can be found in every race and gender. Some are completely sane-ish, while others are not so much. They have varied IQ scores, and most live regular social lives. There are some with a family history of mental problems, others that have had childhood traumas, and still others with no known predispositions. They just like the thrill of the kill, or perhaps the thrill of not getting caught, the chase. Of all the serial killers in U.S. history, there is one who stands out as the most notorious, and that one is Albert Fish. He was born Hamilton Howard Fish on May 19, 1870. He later changed his name to Albert Fish after being teased by other boys in school. Albert Fish had a family history of mental illness. As a young child, when his father died, he was placed in an orphanage where he claims to have seen and experienced things that no young boy should have to experience. He believes this is where he developed his sexual perversions. As a young man, he was a prostitute until he became a traveling house painter. He did marry. He had 6 children with his wife. While it is unclear where or when his reign of terror began, he was convicted of the abduction and murder of Grace Budd in 1934. He was then executed by way of electric chair on January 16, 1936. Fish was known to have killed at least 3 children, suspected of killing 15 children, and confessed to mutilating over hundreds of children. However, these were unconfirmed. He holds the record for having the most sexual perversions and psychological problems, as well as a record for being the oldest person to ever be executed in the electric chair. Fish was known to have at least 18 known perversions. A lot of these perversions were considered deviant behaviors because, at the time, most states had laws against sodomy. Sodomy is loosely defined as anal or oral sex copulation or any form of non-procreative sexual activity. Some of these perversions include, but are not limited to, analinguist, cannibalism, copophilia, cunnilinguist, exhibitionism, fellatio, flagellation, infibulation, masochism, pedophilia, Pachyriaism, sadism, urophilia, voyeurism. It is these deviant behaviors that was used to demonize and convict Albert Fish. However, according to Ferris and Steen, deviance is a behavior, trait, or belief that departs from the norm and generates a negative reaction in a particular group. They go on to say that what is perceived as deviant can and will change over time. For example, S&M may have been an extreme perversion in the past. Nowadays, it is fairly commonplace within mainstream media. Well, at least the soft, playful, respectful versions with safe words and all that. It is highly unlikely, however, that fish would use safe words or restraint. Another example of these deviant behaviors that change over time could be cunnilinguists, fellatio, analinguists, which in the past may have been viewed as deviant. However, nowadays, while some may still have apprehensions about playing around at the back door, most people do enjoy a little FaceTime every now and then. During the time of his reign of terror, the world was experiencing the Great Depression, and racial segregation was still in full effect. Fish confided in Dr. Wortham a long history of preying on children, at least 100. Fish would bribe them with money or candy. He usually chose African American children because he believed that the police did not pay much attention when they were hurt or missing. He was also known to abduct children that lived in poor neighborhoods or that had mental handicaps because he believed the police would not pay attention. Because the police lacked empathy for the people of lower socioeconomics and racial groups, he worked practically unseen for many years. Before Albert Fish's incarceration for murder, he had been jailed numerous times on petty crimes. He also had spent time in a couple different mental hospitals throughout his life. However, most of the charges against him were dropped because the police and psychologists viewed him as a frail, harmless old man. Fish felt he was deeply religious. He attended church on a regular basis. However, it seems that he leaned towards the dark imagery portrayed within the Bible: purification through pain, sacrifice, and especially the stories of Abraham and Isaac. Fish felt that if God didn't want him hurting or killing children, then God or his angels would have stopped him. Because no angels ever stopped him, then he must have been doing something good. He felt that he was sacrificing children and ultimately saving them from a life of hardship and pain. It probably didn't help that he had audio and visual hallucinations that he believed were the voice of Jesus and angels. These voices helped to confirm, at least in his own head, that what he was doing was right and righteous. The biggest piece of evidence that led to the arrest of Albert Fish was an infamous confession letter that he wrote in response to a well-devised ploy by the police and the news media. In the movie, Albert Fish, in Sin He Found Salvation, the detective in charge of the Grace Budd case decided to team up with a gossip columnist in an attempt to challenge the abductor's morality by calling him a lonely, depraved pedophile. After reading the news report, Fish wrote a letter to the mother of Grace Budd, explaining what all he did, detailing the abduction, murder, mutilation, and eating of her daughter. And in the end of the letter, he did write that she died a virgin. The police were able to track back where the letter had come from and eventually captured Albert Fish. Fish then cooperated with the police, revealing the remains of Grace Budd and confessing to much more. The defense psychologist, Dr. Wortham, believed that Fish had actually killed 15 children and mutilated about 100 more.